The rescue helicopter banked wide over my ranch for the third time, its rotors beating the thick Arizona desert air into a frenzy as the last sunlight bled away behind the sandstone cliffs. Holding my binoculars up, I caught sight of the pilot making sharp, impatient gestures with one hand, while speaking urgently into the radio. And there, planted like some deranged lawn ornament in the dead center of my clearly marked landing zone, stood Craig Dutton, arms folded across his chest and a laminated stop sign hoisted over his head, like he was commanding a kindergarten traffic drill. He had even taken the time to arrange bright orange cones in a perfect circle around himself, as if that pitiful setup could keep a $40 million aircraft from touching down on land that legally belonged to me. My radio crackled. The pilot sounded exhausted already. "Sir, we've got an individual on the ground claiming to represent some sort of neighborhood security authority. He says we're violating something called airspace tranquility regulations. I need this zone cleared immediately. We're transporting the governor of Arizona for a wildfire assessment flight." I watched Craig lift the bullhorn he'd purchased using HOA funds, even though 3 separate votes had denied the purchase, and start yelling at the sky as though he could outshout helicopter blades. "This is a breach of Sandstone Valley Estates HOA Ordinance 73.5. All aircraft must submit written landing requests 14 business days in advance. You are trespassing in a regulated airspace." The helicopter looped above us again, clearly irritated. Someone in the back cabin leaned forward, said something to the pilot, and a moment later my radio lit up once more. "Sir, the governor wants you to know that if this person is not removed from the landing zone within 2 minutes, she will personally make sure he spends the night in county jail." She included several descriptors I won't repeat over open channels. I wanted to laugh, but the situation wasn't remotely funny. My name is Reed Malloy, and at 51 years old, after 25 years working as a search and rescue paramedic, I thought I had seen the full range of human absurdity. I've pulled people out of flash floods, rappelled off cliffs in thunderstorms, and once delivered twins in the back of a helicopter during a blizzard. But absolutely nothing prepared me for life in the Sandstone Valley Estates HOA, or for the chaos that arrived when self-appointed dungeon master Craig Dutton moved in 3 years ago. He bought a 10-acre ranch on the eastern edge of the development, a property with a unique history and an even more unique legal easement. The prior owner, a retired medevac pilot named Bill Hawthorne, had secured a permanent emergency landing designation for the property. It was recorded with the county, filed with the State Aviation Authority, and printed on every FAA flight map in our region. Craig didn't care. In his warped worldview, HOA rules overrode federal aviation law, state wildfire protocols, and even basic logic. Craig was 5'6" in orthopedic shoes, and always wore mirrored aviators indoors or out. He had retired from a mall security job and somehow convinced a previous HOA board to create a new position just for him, Chief of Community Security. From that moment on, he ran the neighborhood like a tiny, dust-covered dictatorship. The wildfire crisis began 5 days earlier, when a lightning strike ignited a patch of brush 15 miles north of us. Within 48 hours, the fire grew past 3,000 acres. It wasn't an immediate threat to our homes, but the state activated its emergency response plan. My ranch, flat open and close to the highway, was selected as a staging site for helicopter operations. I spent 2 days prepping the clearing, coordinating with the fire marshal's office, and setting up water stations. Everything was on schedule until Craig discovered what was happening. It started with an email at precisely 11:30 p.m., soaked in outrage. "Mr. Malloy, I've been informed that you intend to allow aircraft to land on your property without HOA authorization. This violates community standards regarding noise, dust, and visual aesthetics. Cease immediately, or face daily fines." I replied with the legal documents, the emergency authorization from the state, and a reminder that blocking emergency aircraft is a federal crime. 6 minutes later, he responded, "Federal in Sandstone Valley Estates, I am the law." The next morning, I found a chain-link gate across my private road with a sign reading "Authorized HOA Vehicles Only," next to another sign that proclaimed "No airborne intrusions." When I confronted him, he insisted the gate was for my own safety. "Helicopters can reduce property values by up to 3%, he said, quoting apparently a study he found online. I cut the lock off with bolt cutters. By evening, he replaced it. We repeated this dance 4 times in 2 days, until I finally removed the entire gate, hauled it to his driveway, and propped it against his garage door with a note, "Keep your gate on your own property." And now, today's spectacle, Craig standing defiantly in the landing zone, shaking a stop sign at a helicopter carrying the governor, 2 wildfire officials, and a news crew. The situation was no longer simply ridiculous, it was dangerous. The helicopter was running low on fuel after 20 minutes of circling. The pilot radioed again, more strained than before. "Sir, we need to land now. We have 15 minutes of fuel left. The nearest alternate site is 25 minutes away. If this individual is not removed, we will have to declare an emergency." That was enough for me. I sprinted toward Craig, who was now reading directly from his laminated HOA charter through the bullhorn. Article 9, Section 4. All vehicles wheeled, tracked, or airborne must display a valid community parking permit. Craig, I said, doing everything in my power to stay calm, you need to move. This is a state emergency. You are committing multiple felonies. He aimed the bullhorn at me. Reed Malloy, you are violating Ordinance 12.6. Intimidating a community security officer during the performance of his sacred duties. Before I could respond, sirens wailed through the desert. 3 vehicles, a state police cruiser, a fire department truck, and a black SUV with government plates rolled onto the field. Tom Richardson, the state fire marshal I'd been coordinating with, stepped out of the SUV, alongside a state trooper and a man in a dark suit. Tom called out, "Mr. Dutton, you have 10 seconds to clear the landing zone before you're arrested for interference with emergency operations, reckless endangerment, and several other charges I don't have the patience to list." Craig spun around and brandished the stop sign like a sword. "You have no authority here. This is private HOA territory. I demand your guest pass." Deputy Morrison, a tall no-nonsense woman who had zero tolerance for stupidity, stepped forward and put her hand on her handcuffs. "Sir, move away from the landing zone now." Craig's face flushed crimson behind his aviators. "This is a conspiracy. Reed Malloy has bribed you all with helicopter money. HOA law is supreme." The helicopter descended lower, the rotors blasting sand everywhere. The downdraft blew Craig's orange cones across the field, and sent his heavily sprayed comb-over whipping around like it was trying to escape his head. The helicopter door slid open. A woman in a tailored suit, Governor Patricia Sandoval, leaned out, giving Craig a glare so sharp you could cut steel with it. She lifted her phone and aimed it at him, recording. Then she pulled out her own bullhorn and shouted, "Mr. Dutton, I am Governor Patricia Sandoval, and you are currently being filmed for what will almost certainly go viral. As HOA guard attempts to arrest Governor, you have 5 seconds to step aside, or I will personally ensure your place in Arizona history as its most spectacular fool." Craig, in a move that proved he had no functioning survival instincts, stepped closer to the helicopter and raised his stop sign higher. "I need to see your HOA guest pass." Rules are rules. Deputy Morrison had officially had enough. She closed the distance in 3 fast strides, grabbed Craig's arm, spun him around, and cuffed him while he shouted about airspace purity and the sacredness of HOA sovereignty. "You are under arrest," she announced, "for interference with emergency operations, obstruction of government administration, and reckless endangerment." As she dragged him toward the SUV, he yelled, "You'll all be banned from Sandstone Valley Estates. Every one of you. This is not over." With Craig finally out of the way, the helicopter landed. Governor Sandoval stepped out, brushed dust off her suit, and offered me her hand. "You must be Mr. Malloy," she said. "Thank you for your patience. I hear you've been dealing with this individual for some time." "You have no idea," I replied. "Last month he tried to fine me because he said I had too many clouds over my property." She laughed. "We can solve that." She turned to Tom. "I want this ranch designated as an official emergency infrastructure site, full state protection, immune from any HOA restriction, and make it clear that if Mr. Dutton approaches within 500 feet, he'll be charged with trespassing on protected state land." Over the next hour, while the governor completed her wildfire briefing, I learned just how deep Craig's trouble ran. Interference with emergency operations carried up to 5 years in prison and a hefty fine. Obstruction added more. Reckless endangerment added still more. Tom shook his head. Even with the plea deal, he's looking at time. The next morning, the HOA held an emergency meeting. 70 residents showed up. Our board president, Harold Blackstone, a retired judge, began with a long sigh. "Yesterday's incident brought significant negative attention. The board has voted unanimously to terminate Mr. Dutton as Chief of Community Security, effective immediately. The position is dissolved." Someone shouted, "What about his insane rules? Cloud fines, bird watching permits, grass length measurements?" Harold nodded. "All citations issued by Mr. Dutton in the last 18 months are void. Any money collected will be refunded. We are reviewing all our bylaws." 2 weeks later, I received a package from the governor. Inside was a certificate officially naming my property, the Malloy Ranch Emergency Response Zone, giving it legal protection against every HOA rule. A handwritten note was tucked inside. "Next time I'll bring my HOA guest pass." Governor Sandoval. 3 months later came Craig's trial. He refused every plea deal and insisted on representing himself. He argued loudly that HOA law superseded state and federal law. The judge, already strained, warned him that sovereign citizen arguments were not welcome. The jury took 47 minutes to find him guilty on all counts. He received 18 months in minimum security prison, 3 years probation, and $40,000 in fines. As officers escorted him out, he shouted, "The HOA will rise again. You cannot stop properly submitted community guidelines." His wife filed for divorce the next day, citing irreparable embarrassment and the fact that Craig was already trying to form an HOA inside his prison cell block. And just like that, the skies above my ranch finally returned to peace, real peace. Not the kind Craig tried to enforce with a laminated stop sign and a fistful of imaginary regulations.